What's up, friends, and welcome back to my channel. So today I am reviewing the Sunlighten sauna, and I thought, well, what better place to review it than in the actual sauna? So as I start to sweat here, hoping to keep this little camera alive, I'm going to be answering all of your burning questions about how this thing works, what special features you actually get, what it looks like to put this thing together, and finally, how hot does it actually get? So grab some towels and maybe a glass of water or two, because we are about to get all sweaty up in here. So the Sunlighten model I'm in right now is the Amplify 3. It's a full spectrum infrared sauna that can fit up to 3 people. Although 3 is a bit of a crowd, if I'm being honest. It also comes with 7 heaters, including these 5 far infrared panels behind me and these 2 full spectrum panels right in the front. It also comes with a bunch of other specs, which I'll get to in just a sec. But before I do, let me explain why we decided to go with this particular sauna, because there are a lot of options out there. In fact, we initially looked at getting a traditional dry sauna because they tend to get the hottest and have been the most widely studied for their range of different health benefits. But we actually found a lot of them to be more expensive and harder to assemble than some of these top of the line infrareds. So then when we narrowed it down to an infrared sauna, well then the question became Sunlighten or Clearlight. Now I've tested out both of them at different spas over the years and have to say they're very similar in design and come equipped with a lot of the same bells and whistles. So I turned to the experts. Well, mainly my friend Kyle got camera because he's been raving about his Sunlighten for over a year now. And since this sauna does get a little bit hotter than some of the Clearlight ones, we decided to give it a go. Even though Clearlight definitely has some really unique features, including floor heaters, which this one doesn't have, and their own app. So that being said, let's move on to the shipping and assembly. And I've got to say, I was pretty surprised at just how long it took to ship this Sunlighten sauna. I think we placed the order in like late April, and then this thing did not show up at our door until very end of June. And granted, I get that we do live on an island and it takes forever to ship pretty much anything here, but still, their site says like 5 to 10 business days, and if my math is correct, that was more like 2 months. But when it did finally arrive, the assembly process wasn't all that bad. As you'll see in the time-lapse video here, yes, there were a ton of heavy boxes, but they were pretty well labeled and all the wood panels fit together easily using magnets. Now, probably the biggest challenges we faced were A, getting that top piece secured perfectly in place, and B, making sure that glass door did not break while moving it all around our backyard. But between 2 people with very little experience when it comes to putting together saunas, I'd say it took us maybe 2.5 hours tops, start to finish. So let's move on to size and spacing, which is definitely something you're gonna wanna consider before making this purchase. So in terms of size, this model is about 5 feet wide, 6.5 feet tall, and 4 feet deep. Now they do recommend keeping the sauna inside your house where you have more control of the ambient temperature. But since we do live in Hawaii where it is hot all the time, we've actually had no trouble with leaving it outside. And in fact, I think it actually keeps it warmer when you get in at night. And as you'll see here, for rain protection, we just threw on a simple plastic cover to protect this thing from the elements. But a very important thing to consider is power supply, because you're gonna need a special type of outlet to hook this bad boy up. And let me show you exactly what you'll need. This is a dedicated 120 volt, 20 amp circuit and outlet, and it's required for most infrared saunas. So if you have one of these and you live in an apartment complex like us, well, you might want to just check with the building first to make sure that you're not going to blow a fuse every time you turn this thing on. So now that we've covered shipping, assembly, and power supply, let's talk about what's actually happening inside this sauna. So this right here is the control panel, which allows you to adjust the time, lighting, and temperature. So after you turn it on, you can can then adjust the temperature up and down to a maximum of 170 degrees. And then these arrows are for timing. This on and off switch right here is for the 2 full spectrum panels at the front of the cabin. You can toggle between green, blue, and red for different levels of intensity, with red being the most intense and green being the least intense. And speaking of heat, let me address these carbon panels. So most infrared saunas these days have either carbon or ceramic heaters, or in Clearlight's case, a mixture of both. Now the biggest difference is that the surface area of ceramic heaters tends to be smaller. So you're really getting more of an even distribution of heat with some of these carbon ones. Now in this model, you're getting 5 of these carbon panels, which are emitting far infrared heat. And even though these full spectrum panels in the front are very hot when you sit right in front of them, it's really these far infrared panels that are running the show here. But coming back to this control panel, and let's take a look at lighting. So this light bulb icon on the right side turns on the outside lights, and then the one on the left side turns on the inside ones. And then once you do toggle on the interior lights, you'll then use this separate remote to control the intensity and hue. And as I mentioned earlier, this unit comes equipped with this chromotherapy lighting. So each one of these different colors supposedly has a different therapeutic effect on the body. For instance, they claim the blue light is really good for muscle relaxation, whereas the red light is said to be good for energy and circulation. So you can keep it on one single color, or you can cycle through multiple colors using these transition buttons on the right. So once you get the heat and the lighting just right, then it's time to transition over to sound. Now the cabin has 2 Bluetooth speakers built in at the top. To program your music or a podcast, you just open up this secret trap door at the top, you press the on button and connect to your phone's Bluetooth. Now because this cabin is so well insulated for heat, it really does make for some pretty killer acoustics. And I've got to say that the overall sound quality coming from these 2 speakers is actually really good. And when you've got your music on, you really can't hear much of what's going on the outside, and vice versa. And now let's turn to EMFs. So if you're curious about this, Sunlighten actually brands this as a low EMF sauna. And when I did some magnetic readings using my acoustic meter, the numbers did actually match up with the claims that they have on their website. The magnetic field ratings were actually pretty low, staying in that 0.3 to 0.4 range. But I've got to say that just looking at the magnetic fields themselves isn't quite the whole picture. And so when I tested the electrical readings, that's where I started to see some higher numbers. With the sauna on, I was getting readings somewhere between 120 to 300 volts per meter in a couple of different spots, with those Bluetooth speakers emitting some very high numbers. Now granted, I haven't had a chance to actually test out the EMF situation for the Clearlight saunas, but from what I've read, it does seem like they have a little bit better footing on the EMF situation than Sunlighten. So just something to be aware of, and something to maybe take into account if this is a concern for you. And finally, let's look at the big picture and talk about the whole Sunlighten experience before we turn to the pros and cons. So you might be wondering, well, how hot does this sauna actually get? And the answer is pretty freaking hot. Now, I usually preheat the sauna with the full spectrum panel on for about 45 minutes to an hour, which gets that cabin up to 157 degrees by the time I step in. I am pretty much drenched like 10 minutes in, and usually hit my limit by the 30-minute mark when the temperature hovers around 167. And then I actually continue to sweat for another 15 minutes after I get out and before I jump in the shower, which is something that doesn't usually happen when I'm using a dry sauna. And in case you're curious about heart rate or how many calories you're burning inside this thing, took a look back at the last 28 sauna sessions I did using my Apple Watch, and here are what those averages showed. So for a typical 30-minute sauna session at max heat, on average, I burned 123 total calories. My average heart rate hovered around 104, and my peak heart rate was around 140. Now granted, the Apple Watch definitely not the most advanced fitness tracker out there, but I was wearing it at the time and it was convenient. And also these numbers are definitely going to vary from person to person. So take this stuff with a grain of salt, but I just wanted to paint you guys a perspective. So yes, you will certainly get a good sweat in if you preheat this thing and you stay in here long enough, but there are so many other benefits, long-term health benefits to prolonged sauna use, which is really the reason we got this thing in the first place. Now, I'm not going to cover all of that in this video. I'll probably talk about that in a future one, but if you want to see some of the research out there and some of the studies that have been done on long-term prolonged heat stress, then check out my links below. I've also included some fantastic resources by Rhonda Patrick. She is kind of the sauna expert in my opinion, so definitely listen to her podcast and check her out. And yeah, that stuff will be in the show notes below. And last but not least, we've got to talk about the pros and cons. So on the plus side, this sauna gets really hot, as you can see, especially when you preheat it beforehand. I also like that you have the option to schedule your sauna session ahead of time using their reservation mode, which you can do by pressing the up and down timer buttons simultaneously and then selecting your hour of choice backwards. But another really big win for me has a lot to do with the quality and the design. The Solo carbon panels really disperse the heat all throughout the sauna, but never get too hot themselves. They also don't use any glue or wires in these panels, so you really don't have to worry about toxicity from any type of off-gassing. And when it comes to wood, they have 3 different options for all of their saunas, including basswood, cedar, and eucalyptus. Now, we went with this basswood primarily because it's a great neutral color, but also because it's apparently one of the least toxic woods you can have for your sauna, so that was also a great plus for us. And then we have to talk about the entire Sunlighten experience, because it is not just about the heat. From the smooth finish on the wood bench to the surround sound speakers and unique lighting, this thing feels much more like a spa than a traditional hot box. Sure, you are going to sweat your ass off, but somehow it feels less taxing doing so with a little bit of music and the right type of mood lighting. Now, I am definitely not saying that this is the only reason to buy a Sunlighten, but all of these features combined definitely enhance the experience and make it that much easier to actually want to get in the sauna each night. And now, my friends, we move on to the downsides. And we have to start with this damn blue light. As you'll see, the control panel illuminates this very bright blue light every time the sauna's on, and there is no way to dim the color or turn it off. So definitely not a big deal during the day, but at night, you're gonna probably want to cover it up with some tape or even wear your blue blockers inside the sauna to protect your eyes before you go to bed. Another thing to consider is just how long it actually takes the sauna to reach maximum heat. I mean, I sometimes preheat it for nearly an hour before stepping in, and then it still takes another 20 to 30 minutes to heat up to 167. So yeah, this thing definitely takes a little bit of time to warm up. And as a quick aside to that, when the cabin does reach 167 to 168, these full spectrum panels in the front will actually auto turn off to prevent the cabin from overheating. Now, I get it's probably a safety precaution, but it kind of threw me for a surprise. Another downside is the actual space. So as I mentioned earlier, Sunlighten bills this as a 3-person sauna. But let me tell you, 3 people in here feels like a lot of people in here. This thing is definitely perfect for 1 person if you want to lay down, and then 2 people, it's comfortable, but 3, you are like packed in here like sardines, and the body heat alone is enough to make you want to pass out. I also totally wish that they had an app, and I know this sounds very millennial of me, but I'm kind of jealous that Clearlight has an app, so you can pre-program your sauna session remote. I don't know why Sunlighten doesn't, but I wanted to complain about that. Oh, and let's not forget about price. This particular model, the Amplify 3, is gonna run you somewhere around $4,500 plus shipping, but it
is about $2,000 cheaper than a similar model that Clearlight makes. So the bottom line is, if you do plan to get an infrared sauna for your home, expect to pay somewhere between $3,000 to $5,000 for a high quality sauna. Because a lot of the models that you'll find at Costco or even on Wayfair, they are a heck of a lot cheaper, but you are going to get what you pay for. And if you do plan to use this thing regularly and you want it to last for a very long time, I gotta say, I would probably go with one of the more reputable brands on the market, something like Sunlighten or Clearlight. I just honestly think those might be your best bet if this is something that you are planning to invest quite a bit of time and money into. Now, that being said, I am planning to review some of those cheaper alternatives on the market right now, including the higher dose infrared sauna blanket, which yes, I did buy. And yes, I am planning to review it. And I thank all of you guys for the great suggestion. I know this is something that I'm excited about, you guys are excited about, so I will be coming out with that video probably sometime next month, maybe do a little comparison between the two. And that one I can say is like a fraction of the cost of this. So just something to keep in mind if you want something a little bit more portable. So at the end of the day, do I absolutely love this sauna and use it almost every day? 100%. Am I drenched right now? You bet. My pants are soaked. But in all seriousness, I would recommend this sauna to pretty much anyone who is looking for a really well-built, high quality, has all the features, and gets really, really hot infrared sauna. Yes, there were definitely some snafus on the shipping, and maybe the EMFs in here aren't perfect, but I'm still really happy with the whole kit and caboodle. So if you are looking to get a sauna, I would say a couple of things to think about: your budget, the aesthetics, where it's gonna go in your home, and then look for a company that has a really good warranty, because if this thing breaks, you're gonna want them to fix it. And I know Sunlighten has a really good one, Clearlight does too. So that's just something to kind of keep in the back of your head when you're shopping around for different saunas. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you learned something, if you liked this video, please make sure to give it a big thumbs up. For all the other things, you guys already know the drill. Hit the subscribe button, the notification bell, all the things. And until then, I cannot wait to catch you on the next one. And I am now going to go shower. So yeah, it's time for you to go.